Now, in the interest of full disclosure, and because I don't want to tell a lie in a house of worship, I must admit that Martha had one incredibly annoying quality. It was virtually impossible to pay her a compliment. The moment you tried, she deftly turned the conversation around to something about you and how nice you looked, or what an impressive thing it was that you had accomplished, etc., etc., etc. If you made a follow-on attempt to praise her, she once again turned the conversation around. Were there rankings for verbal judo, Martha would have been a 5th-degree black belt. In a Post and Courier article profiling Martha, a frustrated reporter wrote that during the interview she was, quote, being a polite yet implacable pain in the rump. Yes, she's willing to be profiled, she says, but can't the piece be more about her client instead? The reporter tried to explain to Martha that the article was supposed to be about her. He said that Martha, quote, listens to the explanation, digests the logic, then returns to her original point from a slightly different angle. There's really nothing at all that interesting about her, she says, again, and a better story would be more about one of her clients, someone who had turned her life around. It's like arguing with your Sunday school teacher, which is about the time you realize that if you were the one facing jail time on a criminal charge, this would be the woman you'd want representing you. Ceci Wilson, Martha's longtime investigator at the PD's office, explains that, quote, Martha reflected the light. That's just what she did. If you were ever touched by Martha, it served as a reminder of what a good person truly is. Martha often said of her clients, a person is more than the worst act of their lives. She wisely subscribed to the precept that the most effective means of representing a client is to know them well and to relate their life story in an engaging manner. In a 2005 newspaper interview, she explained it this way: I could take 10 crimes and read them to you, and you'd say, yuck, how could they do that? But when you go down and talk to my client, it changes. You see them as a person. And there was no one better at making others see that person. Former Charleston County Public Defender Staff Attorney Mary Beth Mullaney once observed, I watch Martha in court and I'm amazed at how she can take a client that may sound unappealing and tell his story in such a powerful way that everyone in the courtroom cares about what happens to him. She is the master of the guilty plea, and no one does it more skillfully. The judges respect her, and the clients love her. The rest of us just want to be a little bit like her. Those of us who had the privilege of watching Martha in action understand why. Can't you see her? Can't you just see her now, standing next to her client in a flowing skirt and with a flower in her hair, speaking to the judge in that lilting Southern accent, calmly relating the story of her client's life, weaving a tale so captivating that it slowly draws everyone in before they're even aware. Then, as she continues to speak, she redirects her gaze to look up at her client, reaches up, and gently touches him on the shoulder with perfect ease, as a preschool teacher might, to reassure him and the judge that there is nothing to fear, that somehow everything will be all right. But Martha's efforts extended far beyond the courtroom. Ashley Pennington wrote that Martha was a community-oriented public defender before this term was coined. Instead of simply processing a person through the court procedures, Martha took an interest in helping clients find the tools they need to deal with the problems of poverty, addiction, illness, and unemployment. Such was the case with one of Martha's greatest success stories, Miss Pearlie Allen. Miss Pearlie had lived a difficult life. When Martha represented her in 1998, she was homeless and had been addicted to crack cocaine for nearly a decade. With a long history of shoplifting to support her drug habit, Pearlie was facing 35 years in prison on yet more charges. The day came for her guilty plea, and she appeared in court with Martha. As the proceedings began, The judge warned that he was going to send Pearlie to prison. But then fate took a hand. The judge spied a newly appointed judge who happened to be in the courtroom observing the proceedings and asked if she would take her first plea. Martha rubbed Pearlie on the back and whispered, "Miss Pearlie, I think we have a chance now." Terrified, Pearlie had her eyes pressed tight in prayer and did not notice the switch. When she finally opened them, she learned that, thanks to Martha's advocacy, she had been sentenced not to prison, but 3 years of probation. The moment she walked out of the courtroom, Pearlie began a new life. She found a job and a place to live. The road ahead was not easy. The work was hard and the temptations were still there. But two things kept Pearlie on the straight and narrow: her faith and the constant encouragement from Martha's phone calls and letters. Eventually, Pearlie bought an 18-wheeler with a $1,700 per month note and began driving. I had the privilege of meeting Pearlie last night's gathering, and she is here again this morning. She wept as she told me that she paid off the loan for her truck and that she continues to live a good life. Miss Martha saw something in me that others didn't, she said. Sometimes the Lord will send you an angel. Martha is my angel. United States District Judge Cam Curry agrees. She said, "Martha was an angel to a great many folks, from clients to colleagues, her many friends, and her family. She's one of those folks who gives the legal profession a good name." Martha never sought the limelight, but the limelight found her nonetheless. In 1989, she was named the South Carolina Bar Legal Services Lawyer of the Year. In 1996, that same organization presented her with the Oasis Award for her significant contributions to its pro bono program. In 2004, the American Bar Association named her as the recipient of the prestigious Dorsey Award, given annually to recognize the best public defender in the United States. On October 21st, 2011, the South Carolina Women Lawyers Association presented Martha with the Jean Galloway Bissell Award for distinguished and noteworthy service to the public and the legal profession. When she received the award, Martha brilliantly articulated the reasons why she devoted her life to being a public interest lawyer and just what it means for one to serve as a public defender. Her heartfelt words should be required reading for anyone contemplating the practice of law and the true meaning of justice. "Public defending is such a gratifying profession," she said. "Public defender clients are the most powerless people in our nation. Likewise, their family and friends are the most powerless people in our nation. They were born with the smallest slice of the American pie. By the very nature of qualifying for a public defender, they fall below established poverty guidelines. They have no access to the halls of power. They may tell us sometimes they're going to write the governor or someone they believe to be equally powerful about this or that injustice. But no governor or senator I know of, except maybe Jimmy Carter, has really ever received a letter from a county jail and gotten interested. It is only you, the public defender, sitting with your client in a county jail, looking into his eyes, hearing his story. It is you who is the one person who gets the client's story heard. And you probably don't do it in a dramatic courtroom fashion, as in a suspense-filled trial like some television shows would have you believe. It is more likely you get the client's story heard in quieter, more everyday work ways, like meeting with the prosecutor and humanizing your client, softening the police officer up by telling the police officer your client's story, or using your client's life story as mitigation in a plea with the judge. Regardless of how you use your client's story, you are the one who gets his story out, and you are the only one with the ability to make others care about him. That is such a responsibility and such a privilege. I had a client who was older, not older than me, from Guatemala Island, and had a long history of mostly petty, almost exclusively nonviolent crime. When I was with him getting his plea ready, I knew the state, as solicitors are charged to do, would tell the bad parts about my client. So I worked with him on painting a picture of the more good parts, the interesting parts, what it was like to grow up on a sea island in the 1950s, to leave school in the 2nd grade to work with mother and father on the farm, what the sea islands were like then and the changes he had seen in the past 50 years of living in this unique place. I told him, here's what I'm going to say, and while of course speaking to his current shoplifting crime, but mostly painting a picture for the judge of the life he had growing up in the Gullah culture. My client listened intently to my sanitized version of his life. When I finished, he said, like a child hearing a fairy tale, he said softly, "Tell it again, Miss Dicus. Tell it again." He liked the story of his life with the bad parts soft-pedaled and the unique parts emphasized. It is the PD's job to get that side of the story out. To be the one trusted with getting a client's story out is humbling, it is rewarding, it is a privilege, it is powerful. Hundreds of PDs statewide sit with clients in lonely county jail cells, listen to their stories, and are given this trust by the client of getting their whole story out to the world, of telling their story in such a way as to make others care about the client. Every single one of us has been blessed to have known Martha and to have had her in our lives. However, there can be little doubt that those who benefited most from Martha's presence on this earth are the less fortunate citizens for whom she toiled. When interviewed by the Beaufort Gazette in September 1993 and asked why she worked for legal services, Martha responded, "These people are my friends. These are the people who make it worth getting up in the morning." Ralph Waldo Emerson said that a friend may well be reckoned the masterpiece of nature. If this be true, then Martha Dicus was the Mona Lisa. She understood that true wealth is not measured by the fees we earn, but by the friends we make and the lives we touch. In that regard, she remains the richest person I know. But Martha was not content simply to have her own set of friends and to keep them to herself. She constantly sought to introduce folks of different walks of life to one another and to build relationships like some bumblebee cross-pollinating the garden of humanity. Many here today are now friends as a result of their first having been friends with Martha. As Frank McCann astutely mused, if I were President of the United States, I'd make her Secretary of State. Last year, Mary Beth Mullaney related a story about Martha's interaction with her clients soon after hearing of her illness. Her account is reminiscent of a scene from To Kill a Mockingbird. Martha always put her clients first, she said. Recently, she was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer. In the days before her surgery, she wanted to see each and every one of her clients before her extended leave. Martha spent her weekend at the jail fitting them all in. On Sunday, the prisoners gave her a standing ovation as she walked by. They did not know of her impending surgery. They were just happy that she was there on a weekend to see them. Mary Beth concluded, "Martha's career has been spent helping the poor and the powerless. She has taught us all how gratifying and powerful that is. I'm a better lawyer because I have known Martha. And more importantly, I'm a better person."